Hello everyone. Today we're diving into one of the darkest scandals in modern history, a story that refuses to fade away, the Jeffrey Epstein case. And now, in early 2026, the American Department of Justice has released over 3 million pages of documents that are shaking the world once again. On January 30th, 2026, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche announced the release of 3 million pages of documents, more than 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images related to the Epstein investigations. What do these files reveal? Which powerful figures are implicated? And most importantly, will justice ever truly be served? Let's break down everything you need to know. This massive document dump didn't happen overnight. It was the result of a political battle that began during the 2024 presidential campaign. During his campaign, Donald Trump repeatedly promised to release the Epstein files, positioning himself as someone who would expose government cover-ups. But once he returned to the White House, the story changed dramatically. On November 18th, 2025, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act in a stunning 427-to-1 vote in the House, followed by unanimous Senate approval. Trump signed it into law the next day. The law gave the Department of Justice just 30 days to release all Epstein-related documents. But here's where it gets interesting. The initial December 19th deadline came and went with only a fraction of the files released, and those that were released were heavily redacted. Over 500 pages were completely blacked out. Critics from both parties slammed the DOJ for what they called a whitewash. Even more suspicious, within 24 hours of the first release, 16 files mysteriously disappeared from the public website without explanation. And here's the kicker. Amateur tech enthusiasts discovered that faulty redaction techniques allowed them to recover information that officials had tried to hide. Public outrage mounted. Polls showed that 91% of Democrats, 78% of independents, and 74% of Republicans wanted the full files released. Yet only 6% of Americans said they were satisfied with what had been released so far. Finally, on January 30th, 2026, more than a month past the legal deadline, the DOJ released the massive tranche we're discussing today. Over 3 million pages. But the question remains, is this everything? Or is more still being hidden? So what did these 3 million pages actually reveal? Let's start with the most shocking discoveries. Prince Andrew, the smoking gun photos. Perhaps the most damning evidence involves Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew. The files include photographs showing the ex-prince kneeling on all fours over an unidentified woman lying on the floor. In 2 of the photos, his hand is placed on her stomach. In another, he stares directly into the camera. The woman's face is redacted, and there's no context about when or where these photos were taken. But they paint a disturbing picture. The files also include email exchanges from August 2010, where Epstein offered to introduce A, believed to be Andrew, to a 26-year-old Russian woman. Epstein described her as clever, beautiful, trustworthy. Andrew replied that he would be delighted to see her, and asked, "Will she be bringing a message from you?" In another September 2010 email, Andrew wrote to Epstein, "We could have dinner at Buckingham Palace and lots of privacy." This comes just months after King Charles III stripped Andrew of all his royal titles in October 2025. He's now known simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has publicly stated that Andrew should cooperate with American investigators, but so far he's refused to respond to a House Oversight Committee request for testimony. Bill and Hillary Clinton are also facing intense scrutiny. The files show that Epstein visited the White House 17 times during Clinton's presidency, and flight logs indicate Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private plane at least 27 times. New photos released in December 2025 show Clinton with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, including one of a shirtless Clinton in what appears to be a massage scenario, with someone the DOJ described as a victim. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee subpoenaed both Clintons to testify about their relationship with Epstein, but in January 2026, they refused to appear, calling the subpoenas legally invalid. On January 21st, the committee voted to hold them in contempt of Congress, and notably, some Democrats joined Republicans in that vote. 9 Democrats voted to hold Bill Clinton in contempt, while 3 joined to hold Hillary Clinton in contempt. The House is expected to vote on the contempt resolutions in the coming days. If passed, the matter would be referred to the Justice Department for potential prosecution. Emails released in the files show correspondence between Epstein and Clinton staffers from 2001 to 2004. In one October 2009 email, publicist Peggy Siegel wrote to Epstein that she had just left Maxwell's house where Bill Clinton and Jeff Bezos were there. Perhaps most tellingly, when Epstein was deposed in 2016 and asked questions about Bill Clinton, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination for every single question. President Trump's name appears thousands of times in the documents, though there's no direct evidence of wrongdoing. The files include email correspondence where Epstein and his associates discussed Trump's policies, shared news articles about him, and even gossiped about his family. One particularly interesting exchange is from June 2019, where Epstein messaged Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Now you can understand why Trump wakes up in the middle of the night sweating when he hears you and I are friends. Bannon responded with one word: dangerous. The files also include a spreadsheet of unverified allegations against Trump and others, claims that date back to the 1990s. The DOJ has stated that many of these tips may be fake or falsely submitted, but they were required by law to release everything. Interestingly, Trump's face was redacted in some photos, including a well-known image from 2000 showing Trump, his then future wife Melania, Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell together. Elon Musk appears in the files with email chains showing he reached out to Epstein on at least 2 occasions to plan visits to Little St. James, Epstein's Caribbean island where many alleged abuses occurred. In late November 2012, Epstein asked how many people Musk would like flown by helicopter to the island. Bill Gates is mentioned in emails Epstein sent to himself in July 2013, containing unverified claims about Gates' personal life. Gates has previously acknowledged meeting with Epstein, but downplayed the extent of their relationship. Howard Lutnick, Trump's current Commerce Secretary, appears in emails arranging to visit Epstein's island in December 2012. Lutnick later called Epstein gross and claimed he had severed ties years earlier. Before we continue, we need to talk about Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, whose story is central to understanding this entire scandal. Giuffre was the brave woman who publicly accused Epstein, Maxwell, and Prince Andrew of sexual abuse. She claimed she was trafficked to Andrew when she was just 17 years old. She sued Andrew in 2021, and he settled the case in 2022 for an undisclosed sum, reportedly around $12 million, though he never admitted any wrongdoing. Tragically, Virginia Giuffre died by suicide in April 2025 at her farm in Western Australia. She was 41 years old. Her family stated she lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking. Virginia was a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking. Just weeks before her death, Giuffre had been seriously injured in a car accident with a school bus. She had also been going through a difficult divorce and custody battle. Her memoir, Nobody's Girl, was published posthumously in October 2025 and became a bestseller. Her death raises haunting questions about the long-term trauma experienced by Epstein's victims and whether those who enabled his crimes will ever face real accountability. While Epstein is dead, his partner Ghislaine Maxwell is very much alive and serving 20 years in federal prison. Maxwell was convicted in December 2021 on 5 counts of sex trafficking for her role in recruiting young girls to be abused by Epstein. The newly released files include her mugshot from when she was arrested on July 2, 2020. Emails in the files show extensive correspondence between Maxwell and powerful figures throughout the 2000s and 2010s. She organized dinners, parties, and events that brought together the elite of politics, business, and entertainment. The files reveal Maxwell's complaints about her prison conditions and her continued denials of wrongdoing. To this day, she maintains she was merely Epstein's girlfriend and employee, not his accomplice in trafficking. But the evidence suggests otherwise. Multiple victims have testified that Maxwell was the one who recruited them, groomed them, and in some cases participated in their abuse. She remains in federal prison, but many wonder how many others were involved, and why has no one else been charged? Here's what makes this entire story so frustrating. Despite 3 million pages of documents, we still don't have all the answers. The missing names. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has stated that the public should not expect to find the names of men who abused women in connection with Epstein within these files. In other words, there's no client list. But survivors and their advocates are furious. A group of 19 Epstein survivors released a statement saying, "Information about us remains in the files, while the men who abused us remain hidden and protected." They're demanding the full release of all files and accountability for Attorney General Pam Bondi, who they accuse of not complying with the Transparency Act. What's still hidden? According to a January 5th court filing, the DOJ had reviewed only 125,575 pages out of at least 2 million documents. Democratic lawmakers are questioning why, according to the DOJ's own account, 2.5 million documents remain unreleased. Representative Ro Khanna and others have requested a meeting to review the unredacted files. They want to see victim interview statements, documents from Epstein's computers, and records of the alleged co-conspirators. The conspiracy theories, the partial and heavily redacted nature of these releases has fueled countless conspiracy theories. Some believe powerful figures are being protected. Others point to the suspicious circumstances surrounding Epstein's death in prison in August 2019, officially ruled a suicide but questioned by many. The files include December 2019 emails between officials discussing missing surveillance video from the New York jail, where Epstein survived an earlier suicide attempt. These gaps in evidence only feed the speculation. So where does this leave us? We now have 3.5 million pages of documents. We have photos, emails, flight logs, and FBI reports. We know that Jeffrey Epstein ran a sophisticated sex trafficking operation for decades. We know he had connections to presidents, princes, billionaires, and scientists. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. We know that Prince Andrew has been stripped of his titles. We know that powerful figures like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump had extensive contact with Epstein, though none have been charged with crimes related to him. But we also know this: no additional co-conspirators have been charged. The full extent of Epstein's network remains unclear, and many survivors feel that justice has not been served. Virginia Giuffre fought for years to expose this network. She paid the ultimate price for her courage. Her death reminds us that the damage caused by Epstein and his enablers continues long after the crime. The question now is, will Congress follow through with contempt charges against the Clintons? Will Prince Andrew ever testify? Will the remaining documents be released? And will anyone else ever be held accountable? Public pressure is mounting. Polls show overwhelming support for full transparency. But whether that translates into real action remains to be seen. One thing is certain: this story is far from over. The Epstein files have opened a window into how power, wealth, and privilege can shield predators for decades. They've shown us the courage of survivors who spoke out despite enormous pressure to stay silent. And they've reminded us that in a democracy, transparency isn't just important, it's essential. Because without it, the powerful can act with impunity, and the victims are left with nothing but memories and trauma. The fight for justice continues, and we must continue to demand answers.